the Policy Committee meeting of the Board of Education. It's Monday, February 22nd, 2021. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Our first agenda item is to act on Policy Committee minutes from September 29th, 2020. Did anybody have any comments or questions regarding those minutes? No, okay. I just noticed that the meeting came to order 6:16 p.m. That's probably accurate. It's fine. We're going to leave it as is. I think everybody that was listed as attending that time is listed. So can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I move to approve. Second.
Great, thank you. Okay, great. Item number 3 on the agenda is to review the new Title IX policy and regulation. I know you guys were sent multiple exhibits. Might have felt a little confusing, but we did discuss a lot of this at our last committee meeting, but there was some language and some that Jason was smart to run by the council before we integrated those into a couple other sections of policy. So maybe Jason, you could just briefly speak to that.
Sure. In your packet, you received the new policy and regulation related to policy number 4176. That is the new number for the Title IX policy and regs that we passed back in September. So when we initially had voted in September, as you see reflected in the minutes, we were of the mindset that the new Title IX policy would replace policy 504 with students and policy 4112 with personnel. So upon further review and upon the recommendation of our council that reviews our policies, his recommendation was to give the new Title IX policy related to sexual harassment related to sexual harassment, its own number, keep 504 and 4112 as their own policies with updates because they reflect different types of discrimination and harassment that are not covered under the existing 4176 policy, if that makes sense. And if it doesn't, keep in mind that, just as a review, that the new Title IX policy is, Title IX is a continuum of different factors in terms of discrimination and harassment. The new update to Title IX that occurred earlier this year is only related to sexual harassment or sex discrimination. That's it. So if there's harassment or discrimination based on any other of the requirements, it falls into a different category. The major change in the new Title IX policy for sexual harassment and discrimination that we passed on to the board and we ended up pulling it until we looked at 504 and 412, is that the major change is in the investigatory process. And you'll see, as remember, if you go back and look at it, that it's a rather lengthy process with a series of checks and appeals that are new to the reporting process and the investigation itself. So our lawyer recommended you keep that as a new policy, a new regulation that centers on that silo of complaints or requests for us to investigate. In turn, is there any questions with that part of the new policy? Okay. In turn, if you look at 4112, give me a second here. The updated policy on 4112 is that one pager, the one pager under personnel, if you have it in front of you.
I have two copies for 4112. Are they different?
Right. The one pager on personnel without the letter A next to it is the policy.
Got it.
Okay, everybody got that page? It's not, it says non-discrimination 4112 personnel, no letter next to it. The only changes that were made on that page that we would have to have a motion to accept, if you scroll down, you'll see that the legal references have been updated. The references, and then above it, the areas of the policy book that were updated in conjunction with this policy to now incorporate the Title IX policy. So it's just a reference check. And that was, all of these changes have been approved as, and they even reviewed this week by our attorney for approval. So we would ask for a motion and a vote to accept the changes as reflected in 4112 personnel.
Jason, just a quick thing on my download under CF 0521, there's like a little box next to grievance procedure for discrimination complaints, but I click on the box, I don't see anything written in the box. Am I supposed to be seeing something as a highlight? Or is
No,
that
not at this point. That just recommends, that's not a link, it's just a change.
okay? That's what I wanted to clarify. I got you.
Well, thank you for the question. Any questions on those changes?
No. Okay, so that's regards to 4112. So should we, well then, per the agenda, should we discuss, do we feel like there's any other questions regarding that, the 4112 personnel section, the exhibit?
No.
No, okay.
Should we, we should entertain a motion then, okay.
Exactly. So can I entertain a motion to approve the revised 4112 personnel section so we can move it forward for a general approval of the board?
So moved.
Second.
Second. Then Jason, then moving on to item 3.2.
We have to vote on that.
Right?
We need to move that forward as a group.
Right. So I said,
We just have to vote.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So in terms of 4112 personnel section exhibit as revised and spoken to in this meeting, can I have a vote to approve that to move forward to the general board?
Aye.
Okay, okay, great. So it's
Great,
unanimous.
thank you. If you move to non-discrimination 4112A, that is the regulations that accompany the policy. There are a few changes that were made specifically on page 3. You can take a look at it there. And page 4, where person was made, since this is in personnel, the changes were made to employee. And then a number of changes on page 5 related to the new Title IX policy.
Right.
I will point out on the bottom of page 5, again, and you can see why these changes were needed, where it does say in the bottom about if the allegation of sexual harassment that may constitute a violation of 9, we would not use this process or protocol. We would then refer to 4176 on there. And you'll note that the process on page 5 is much shorter than the process in 4176, which is a completely different protocol. It just incorporates some of the elements of that.
So the 6 steps here. Okay.
And were there any changes made to the complaint form?
I do not believe so.
Okay.
We typically have been moving forms to a different, eliminating them from the policy and regulations. I think for now we keep it in here because of the changes that we've implemented and leave it as a resource. If at later point in time, our council says we can put it in another venue of forms related to board policies, then I'll let you know. But I would recommend keeping this in there.
Jason, this is just a housekeeping thing. I'm just curious with this policy, and I may just be forgetting, like each page is, 4112A, 4112B, 4112C. Is that intentional or is that 4112D? Like each page? is
I
that
think
like-
that predates us, Maura. I think that's how they delineated pages.
Yep, okay, so that, we could probably eliminate that, just in editing, okay. All right, so then, let me get out of this. I can't see all of you, okay.
Are there any questions that I can answer? It's fairly straightforward.
Just again, returning to the agenda there, Jason, because we're voting to replace the the 4112 section and exhibit, so this is in conjunction with that.
I'm sorry, Maura.
So I just want to be very clear because it gets a little muddy here. So we just voted to approve the new 4112, the edited version.
Yep.
So we voted that on. So this relates to that in a separate section. So how are we?
Remember that policies, broad strokes, regulations are steps.
Yep. Okay. So we're okay I just want to understand if anybody has any questions and how we're kind of going about this.
What regulations are doing in this case are now consistent with what is on this page, the policy page. Yep.
Okay. So does anybody have any more questions about that or any of the language around?
Nope.
So then item 3.2, Jason, 5004, the student section.
Do we want to take action on the regulations first?
That's, I'm just, what we should have done. I'm just sorry. It's just in terms of the agenda, we didn't break it out. So I
Yeah.
just want.
No, it's fine.
Okay, so then can I have a motion to approve the procedural portion of policy number 4112, the personnel section?
So moved.
Second.
That to move forward to the general Board of Ed meeting, which will be in 2 weeks.
We have to all vote on it again, correct?
We can't hear you.
All right, you can't hear me? Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
Can I have a vote to approve to move this policy section forward to the general Board of Ed meeting in 2 weeks?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous. Okay, thank you, everyone. Okay. So then,
Now we're on to policy 5004.
5004, which is the student section of the new Title IX policy, the sections that are impacted by this.
Okay, the policy, just for you to get the right form in front of you, is the 2-pager that says discrimination, harassment. It does not say procedures on there. So it just says discrimination, harassment, 5004, and students. Here, we got it?
Yep.
And they're just, again, like the 4112 document under policy, we have on page 1, the incorporation of discrimination or harassment. Discrimination was added in there because it is the discrimination policy for students. On page 2, you'll notice that the additions include that the investigation, the additions where the investigation will be in accordance with the procedures set forth in policy 4176, which is our new policy. However, if the complaint involves an allegation of sexual harassment that may constitute a violation of Title IX, the complaint will be referred to the Title IX policies and procedures in 4176. So again, there is a whole range of discrimination and harassment possibilities, but it sets 4176 as a default if it pertains to sexual harassment or sexual discrimination. And then we had some clarification in the legal references that were updated. And that's it for the policy changes.
Okay.
Again, pretty straightforward.
Just want to see, so I just want to see the other document that you provided. Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so does anybody have any other questions regarding this?
And you can see just as a note, and for the general public, that in the first paragraph of the policy, it really delineates all the number of ways in which somebody can be discriminated against or harassed. So you can see the number of things that are incorporated there that are not necessarily related specifically to sexual harassment.
Do you think that we need to add anything? I'm looking at the list under definition of sexual harassment. I just keep thinking that kids are going to wind up saying things true or untrue online. Like, do you think we need to add any sort of electronic type component to this where it's, I don't know if this is the right location for that, but I'm just saying, like, we're saying all of these things, like spreading rumors. I guess it's implicit in that, right? Spreading rumors on Facebook is spreading rumors, even if it's not from
Well,
your mouth to someone here.
that would be covered under, our bullying and harassment policies regarding cyberbullying.
Okay.
But good question.
Saying if it's like a sexual harassment, if it's not just traditional harassment, are you worried?
Yeah,
that-
like anything. I'm just wondering if we need to put something in there that's sort of like in person, online, like if we need to almost cover all of the categories where these can potentially occur. But again, I don't know if this is the right location for that. But yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to think of, is I feel like
I think if we go in my company, when we specify too much, then it's an argument that we have to address when someone is denying something. Well, it didn't say online, so I'm clear. So I think the more broad we are with just harassment as a whole, I think legally we cover our bases better, as opposed to, in my opinion, because that's how we do it in our company. It's a broad stroke of just harassment.
okay, that makes a lot of sense.
Right, because you can get a loophole of some sort, it wasn't, if you didn't call out that specific social media site or whatever. Okay. All right, so then can I have a motion to approve the replacement of certain language in policy number 5004, the students section, in reflection of the new Title IX policy?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So then can I have a vote to move this forward to the General Board of Ed approval in the next meeting to replace 5004, certain language of 5004 in the student section of the policy handbook for the Guilford Public Schools? A yay or nay? All in favor?
Yay. Yay.
Okay, thank you. And I just wanted to note here too, like Jason and I met briefly, this Title IX new policy is a holdover from the previous federal administration. So with a new, Secretary of Education, we may be seeing some changes again to it, maybe in a different direction. So just to be aware that, this will be the policy, but we may be handed down revisions in the near future.
Okay, the last policy, the last thing to review tonight is the 504A regulations, which is the longer document, which is entitled Discrimination, Harassment, and Procedures. And you'll see much of the same changes on that document because it's related to students in particular. Our attorney did include employee because it crosses over, into the employee section as well. But most of the updates are made as updates were made to these regulations through federal law. So you'll see some minor changes as you go along that put it in alignment with the new Title IX regulations.
Jason, we had talked about this in our conversation regarding the reporter of record. So you are the let me get out of this document so I can actually look at you guys. You are the reporter, correct? So if there is a complaint, in terms of Title IX or any harassment, you are the designated receiver of that complaint?
That's correct.
Okay. And we talked about this. So if there was a complaint specific to someone like who's your superior, like Dr. Freeman, in that scenario, what is the procedure for that? Is it the same or is it?
Yeah, typically, in terms of the investigation, it depends what the complaint was. If it was, certainly if it was related to any one of the Title IX violations, it would probably, under advisement of counsel, probably go to the board instead of me.
Got it. Got it.
Yeah, I think that's what's being highlighted in level 4
Yeah.
there.
Well, yep.
So I just wanted to point that out to you guys, that there is like a procedural, that we're dealing with. Only because Jason, being a superintendent, I'm gonna lose you guys. Hold on a second. Okay, there you are. Just to bring that to note. So does anyone have any questions about that? The 5004A, the language and updates to that portion of the policy section? No. Okay. So then can I have a motion to approve the language revisions to 5004A as they relate to the new Title IX Policy 4176?
So moved.
All in favor? Okay, great. Thank you. Then can we vote to approve to move forward to the General Board of Education to replace 5004A, certain language of the student section as it relates to the new Title IX policy number 4176. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. I just have a couple of updates for you from Cade. As I was talking to Maura earlier in the week, this usually is a busy time for us in terms of policy. The legislature is going to be in session if they're not already, and usually it's a lot of talk about what may be pending in terms of current legislation. But over the course of the past year, I think the legislature has been cognizant of the fact that we've been dealing, with COVID, and our priorities are in other areas in terms of, making it through the year and working with our teachers and our students and our staff and families to, keep the educational train going. So the good news is there's not a lot of updates right now, but there's some things that are percolating that I just want to bring to your attention. None of which require action right now, but they will be this spring. The first one I'll bring to your attention is one you may be familiar with. It's the revisions in the special education law regarding the age of students in special education. That it currently stands now that you can receive services up to the age of your 22nd birthday. We have not updated our policy to reflect that. Jason Scanziano has the policy. He's working on updating that, and we should have that for you at the next meeting. We obviously are complying with the legislation. There's some question as to whether or not that will continue post-COVID. So he's just following through on looking at to see what, do we amend something and then have it, is there a chance it's going to change? So we'll get an update from Jason at our next meeting about that. But that's one on our radar to look at revising. To Joe's point, CABE recently in January put out a statement, and I don't know if you guys get the CABE policy updates at all.
Yeah.
You get that? You receive them?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. And there was a piece in the January 8th issue regarding mandatory COVID vaccinations for students. So in reading through that, they haven't, I know it's a topic right now in front of the one of the subcommittees. So we should have more information on that. And it falls under the category of mandatory vaccines for school systems. So we're monitoring that right now to see how that may impact us in terms of our vaccinations policies. The only other one I have at this point has to deal with some possible changes to Title I. And Jason and Aneen will be looking at that. The Title I program, there's some requirements within the Title I program to form a document that is a compact with the parents. I need to sit down with Jason to see if we have that in our existing policy. And if the update to the Title I policy should reflect that and some of the other provisions related to Title I. Another component besides the compact is some sort of evaluation that would be conducted at the end of each year to give feedback on not only the allocation of resources, but the results of those resources have had on instruction for our most needy students. So we're in the process of looking at that as well. It's one that's flagged by CABE as one that's coming up as a mandatory change. We just have to see what the specific provisions of that are going to be. So on our radar is potentially vaccinations to Title I, and then the IEP special education age requirement.
Jason, when you said compact, I didn't understand what you were referencing.
Yeah, the information I received talks a little bit more about that. I'll read it, if bear with me just for a second. It says, in compliance with federal law, the school entity and the parents and family members with a student participating in a Title I program are required to jointly develop and agree upon a written parent and family engagement policy known as a school parent compact.
So it's not contract, it's compact.
Yes.
Interesting. So it's like a contract though, in a way. It's an
Yep.
agreement. It's agreement between all the parties. Interesting.
And just as a side note, it must outline how parents, school staff, and students will share the responsibility for improved student academic achievement and the means by which the school, parents, and family will help build and develop a partnership to help children achieve the academic standards set forth.
And
So-
then you're saying there's also an evaluation component to that every year.
Yes, I believe that they are now requiring that through ESSA. So it speaks to the findings of an annual evaluation should be used to design evidence-based strategies for more effective parent to family engagement to revise. So in essence, what they're saying is the evaluation then serves as a basis by which your compact would be updated or revised every year.
Okay.
So we're getting the specifics, on that, and if it applies to where we are in district and what we offer, we're going to be revising that part of the Title I policy.
And it sounds like that would be done at the annual IEP.
Yeah.
For students.
Yeah,
Interesting.
much like the end of the year IEP talks to what your strategies would be for the next year. This would be part of that. Yes, that's correct.
But it's like having everyone sign off and agree to the goals of the IEP, that they're satisfied with the services, or like in terms of almost like an annual review.
Right, for Title IX programs, or Title I.
Okay.
But it also sounds like it's suggesting that the students take ownership somehow
That's correct.
of a piece of this. I'm just very curious how that will play out for some of the students, especially students who are very, who are struggling, cognitively and very, delayed cognitively. It's an interesting concept though.
Yeah, and that, just so you know, that was just part of late last month's installment from CABE. So that's pretty much hot off the presses. So I'm waiting to see, what more they have to offer. They're putting forth a recommended policy and reg. I just haven't, since it came in relatively recently, I haven't gone through with Jason yet, but that's one we want to highlight.
Yeah, and it's also the evaluation component. There's already an evaluation component, so it'll be interesting to see how this will be the same or different.
Yeah.
The pre-existing evaluation that's done. So
Right.
Well, and especially under this day and age, right, of distance learning and all the impact that has had on our children. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this plays out.
Yep.
And of course, don't forget, at the end of May, or no, excuse me, usually around July 1, we get all the legislative updates that have come through the session. So right now they're focused primarily on budget and what that may look like for the municipalities. But we usually get a booklet of about 40 pages on it, educational updates. So we usually start the year with a lot of things to go through. But I'm hoping this year, like last year, is one that's going to be streamlined.
Because Jason, I know that they're trying to bring again to the legislature the issue that came up last year regarding vaccinations and the religious exemption and how that might impact us, if that is eradicated. I'll be curious to see what happens in terms of it being like the year of COVID and discussing the new vaccine, if they're going to sustain if the religious exemption goes away for other vaccinations, what they might say about COVID. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't have any inclination of what they're going to do with that, but I like the mandatory vaccination potential. I'm sure there's going to be, something put in place regarding, what exemptions may, if any, be allowed. That will be something we'll have to address as well. And Pam Nelliver has been very good about keeping up with what, the state's been, that whole process at the state level.
Right. I'm also curious too, because I know we want to get off, but kind of tying into this, a lot of children weren't able to get their like annual physicals on time, and that everything was pushed back, and some kids possibly beyond the beginning of the school year, and how we're going to accommodate, or if the state's going to allow for some like leeway with that. Because I know, one of my
I can't comment on that.
Yeah.
That we have been very flexible as a district. We are starting, we started the year by being flexible. We've reminded parents that, have not met that obligation yet. And most have been very cooperative. I think that it has presented some challenges for some of our families, but we continue to work with them, on getting it done and giving them the time by which to do that. So we're rapidly coming up to a deadline at some point, but we've been working with each of the families that, have had questions about it or have had trouble getting, appointments with that. So rest assured that, we've not been rigid at the start of the year.
Yeah, good. Okay. Okay, great. Well, does anybody have anything else in terms of committee agenda or any other items?
No, thanks, Jason.
Yeah,
Well,
thank you.
thank you, guys.
Heavy lifting as always. All right, so can I have a motion to conclude the meeting? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. So I'll see you guys all at 7:30. All right. Thank you.